Hey folks, and welcome into episode 14 of the Longhorn Mailbag, answering your questions from the horn247.com board. Thanks for being with us. Let's jump right into our weekly true-false segment from our good friend Rangers dad, who has to be pretty happy that his Rangers are going to the World Series now. But his first question for us: Texas will use two quarterbacks. I'm going true here. I think Texas is going to have success against BYU, and it's going to be enough success to the point where Steve Sarkisian will feel comfortable letting Arch Manning get a series or two under his belt and kind of see how he does in-game action. Again, that's assuming Malik Murphy starts. Steve Sarkisian said in his Monday press conference that if the game was that day, Malik Murphy would start. I find it hard to think that that changes from now to Saturday, but anything can happen. We'll see. Number two, Texas will run for a combined 250 yards on the ground. I'm going false here. Texas reached over that mark one time this season. It was against Kansas. I think BYU's run defense is respectable enough to where they won't let that happen. Plus, you have to think coming into this week, they're going to be loading the box expecting the run. So I'm going to go false there for that one. But I do think Jonathan Brooks goes for over 100 yards rushing again. He almost got that 5-game streak, literally was 1 yard away last week from going 5 games in a row over 100 yards rushing. I think he gets back to that streak this week. Number three, the defense will force 2 turnovers. I'm going false here. They did last week, but BYU is third in turnover margin in the nation. They're very disciplined. They have not thrown a lot of picks this year, and they also have not coughed up the ball too much this year. I do think the Longhorns get 1 turnover, but Keaton Slovis is a veteran quarterback. Not to say that he hasn't struggled, but veteran enough to where I don't think he throws 2 interceptions or this BYU offense fumbles the ball twice. Number 4, Bert Auburn will be perfect on all of his field goal attempts. I'm going true here. He really has bounced back from struggling a couple of weeks ago and has kicked very well since. He kicked well against Houston in his 1 attempt from field goal range. I think he knocks through whatever comes his way, especially on home turf. Up next, number 5, Texas will score on an explosive play, which he defines as 40-plus yards. I'm going true here. The Longhorns have had a lot of success on these kinds of plays this season, and I think this is a game where they can definitely do it again. We saw it last week with Quinn Ewers' deep shot to Xavier Worthy. I think they break one through this week. I'm going to go through the air on this one. I think Malik Murphy hits a crossing route and somebody turns the corner and explodes for a touchdown. So some confidence in Malik Murphy on my end on that one. I'm going true. Number 6, Jonte Cook will catch a pass. I'm going true here. I think this guy is due for a catch and really a solid game. I think Malik Murphy and he had great chemistry. We saw it in the spring game when it comes to that deep shot that everybody's going to remember. But this is a guy who Malik Murphy was throwing to in spring practices too, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. So I'm going true there. Went 3-2 last week in my true-false predictions with Jeff Howe. So we're staying above that 500 mark, but obviously always want to go to 6-0 this week. All right, now into our questions. Our first one from Horny McHornerson. Based on covering practices and spring games, who does Malik Murphy have chemistry with? So I just touched on one guy, and, Jonte Cook is the guy that everybody's going to remember because of their connection in the spring game, and that certainly is a good answer. But I want to go back to Monday's press conferences with the players. Michael Taft was talking to people, and when he mentioned Malik Murphy, or when Malik Murphy was asked about, Taft said the whole locker room loves him. I think that everybody in the locker room would say that they have a personal connection with Malik. Now, that's certainly exactly what you want to hear when you have a quarterback taking over for a team that's trying to make a Big 12 championship and beyond push in the middle of the season. Now, Malik Murphy's not as experienced, but if you have a guy under center or in the shotgun who has the confidence of all the guys out on the field, has the trust of all the guys out on the field, that's half the battle is that mental aspect of it. So certainly some high praise from Malik Murphy. Now, going back to the question when it comes to who we saw him throw the ball to a lot, you really could point out a bunch of different guys. He and Quinn Ewers were getting the 1 and 2 reps. So Malik Murphy was throwing to a lot of the 1 guys like Jordan Whittington. He found him a lot. DeAndre Moore, Jordan Whittington's backup, was another guy that comes to mind. And Isaiah Nayor as well was a guy that Malik Murphy was throwing to a lot. So maybe this is a game where if that's a guy Steve Sarkisian is comfortable with pairing with Malik Murphy out on the field, they try to get a couple connections. No, Nayor hasn't played much this year, but that was a guy who, going back and watching some of the tape from spring practices that we gathered, is a guy that was out on the field when Malik Murphy was throwing the ball a lot. And our second and final question from Team Mayhall: is this Texas team getting better week to week, or are they regressing? Well, this is a very good question. And I think the honest answer is, I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. And we've seen what Texas is at their best. I think you can point to Alabama and certain parts of the game against Oklahoma, against marquee teams, and those marquee matchups where you know they have to have a good game plan if they want to try and compete for a victory. But other than those two games, it's really been a roller coaster from week to week so far, to the point where we don't know what team we're going to get on a week-to-week basis. Eric and I touched on this in the instant analysis against Houston. You know, they played well, really well against Baylor and Kansas. I would say those two games are probably the most complete games they have played this season. But even then, they had their nooks and crannies that weren't filled and were, you know, stuff that you can raise your eyebrow about a little bit. And then they just go and do what they did against Houston on Saturday. And they are able to sneak away with a win over a team that's first Big 12 conference win in school history was won on a Hail Mary, and a couple weeks prior had lost to Rice. So let that sink in. And, you know, the question is really hard to answer. I think I wouldn't say they're regressing at all, because they're still winning. You can't be winning most of the time and regress as a team. But even in their loss to Oklahoma, they started off horribly, recovered well, and then still couldn't close. You would think that after that loss and a bye week, that Texas comes out of the gates in this Houston game hungry. Steve Sarkisian said leading up to the game that this was a pissed off team that was looking to make a statement. Well, they did. They came out flat against Houston, is the simple way to put it. We were all expecting something stronger in that game, but they did just the opposite of that. So I think the only answer to that question right now is, simply put, we don't know, because right now they're not really doing much of either. They're not taking a step forward, but they're also not taking a step back. So maybe we get a better answer here towards the second half of the season. Maybe Malik Murphy is a guy that changes some of that thinking with this Texas offense. But it is right now kind of a wait and see kind of game where we just really don't know. That's going to do it for episode 14 of the Longhorn Mailbag. Thanks so much for entering your questions on the horns247.com board. Really good questions that I hope I answered some of them intermixed with these two questions, but a lot of great questions. Love to see the participation. Please continue to come back on Sunday mornings. We'll have that thread posted over on horns247.com. As for the YouTube channel, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to turn on post notifications so you are the first to know when new content heads your way. For the rest of the crew, I'm Tommy Yarrish. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.